Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bolt Breakdowns here on the Guilty as Charged podcast YouTube channel. My name is Alex, as always, and we are here with the newly married man. He also coming off of a Florida Gators national championship. Everything has been coming up Trevor recently. So we have Trevor Sikkema from PFF, NFL Stock Exchange, all the stuff he's been doing. Trevor, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Alex. Appreciate you having me on the show. Yeah, it's been quite the last couple of weeks for me, but now feel very recharged. No pun intended for being on this podcast here, but ready for the 2025 NFL Draft, man. So I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course. And just general makeup here of what the Chargers have kind of done in free agency. You've seen kind of the moves they made. How do you think it's sort of set them up for the draft? And do you think that they've done enough, I guess, to get to this point?
Yeah, I think it really when Harbaugh and Ortiz took over last year, you knew it was going to sort of be like a couple of years for them to get through what their initial phase one plan was, or if you want to call it phase one and phase two, whatever, of just building the roster. I thought they did a really good job last year, clearly sort of moving things around to get the right guys in the building, guys that they really wanted to coach. And I think that you saw that on the field. This offseason, a little less flashy, but I think that they did a pretty good job of bringing guys in that they feel good about and setting themselves up for, man, I mean, they got 10 draft picks in this draft. And so they had
Right.
a lot of draft picks to choose from. I think they're going to have a lot of ammunition. I don't think they'll have 10 draft picks when it's all said and done. I think they'll use some of those to sort of move up and down. And I think it'll probably be close to 8 because that's probably what you want to be. You don't want to have like a double digit rookie class. It's a massive class that you got to be able to sign and find some roster positions for. But I think they did a really nice job of setting themselves up to attack, especially the first 3 rounds with some needs that line up to the strengths of the class.
Yeah, and I mean, we even saw last year when they only had 7 draft picks, they still felt the need to go up there and like we're gonna go trade up for Lad McConkey, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
they did in the second round, and move around the board depending on what was available to them. So I think it'll kind of be similar stuff this year. And like you said, they sort of have more ammunition to go trade up. Obviously we'll see what they do contractually as far as like how many they bring onto the roster and like the capital implications of that and all that stuff. Um, what to you stands out as like biggest position of need for them? Not necessarily that they have to attack it first round, but you're thinking first 3 rounds, they got to come away with this spot.
Wide receiver or just pass
Yeah.
catcher, right? I mean, like that is the biggest position of need, whether it is from the wide receiver spot or, we've talked about Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland and guys like that potentially in the first round. And so they just need a major pass catcher because last year it was clearly just Lad McConkey and that's it. And I don't think I'm ready to like give up on Quentin Johnston. Like I still think he's somebody who could be a decent wide receiver, but is he going to hit that ceiling of certainly you drafting him
Mhm.
in the first round? And is he going to be a guy who you go, well, okay, moving forward, like we've got a nice 1-2 with Lad McConkey and Quentin Johnston. I don't even know if you think about him like that. I think that you're probably just in a spot where you're hoping that he's just a really good wide receiver 3 for you, I think, moving forward. And you've got to operate your plans as if you need a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 that can really be a great duo in that starting lineup with Lad McConkey. So you can go to the tight end position as well and see that you don't have a great receiver there. So just pass catcher to me, when I look at this roster, is the one that's the most glaring need that I think you have to hit that either first or second round, whether it's a wide receiver or a tight end.
Yeah, and I think both the progress of Quentin Johnston as well as his limitations are shown kind of by that 2-week span at the end of the season. He has that big
Mhm.
game against the Raiders, and then the next week against the Texans. He was really having some trouble out there against that secondary. And I just think there is a ceiling where you definitely want to bring more young talent in and keep cycling through. Um, One thing that's gotten some discussion as far as like Chargers agenda items is like potentially bringing Keenan Allen back, as like some one of these stopgap options in free agency. But I just think you look at the depth of the wide receiver talent in this draft, and even though it's not what last year's was, I do still think you can get some very playable guys in this class who just have a skill set that will make this wide receiver room a lot deeper and not have the team in quite as many like sticky situations as they were last year, where it just felt like they were waiting for like one guy to really pop off outside of Lad, and it was just very sparing that ever happened in their offense.
Yep.
Um, is there a particular first round target before we get into the mock draft that you just think, obviously everyone talks about the Michigan guys in this draft being, the Harbaugh fits at the top. But is there like a particular player that you've just had circled for, a couple months or the longest time that like, yeah, that's probably what they would want?
Yeah, I think Kenneth Grant does make a lot of sense. Like even beyond like the Michigan connection, getting somebody who's a long term option for them as an interior defensive lineman that they feel they can build the foundation of that interior defensive line and that early down work with. And so Kenneth Grant, I think, makes a lot of sense for them. I also think Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, similar position there as an interior defensive lineman. I gravitate towards him as a great need for this team. Running a lot of odd front stuff, utilizing nose tackles. Like I think that Walter Nolan could be fantastic at that with as good as he was as a run defender this past season. Very high PFF run defense grades. Really strong guy when it comes to his upper body. Former top 5 overall recruit when he was coming out in his class. And so he's a dude that has a ton of athletic ability. He still doesn't quite know what he's doing yet as a pass rusher consistently, but man, he could win with a lot of power and generate a lot of power. So those are two guys that I continue to look at there at number 22 in the first round is the ones that I think make the most sense. And then if you're going tight end, obviously Colston Loveland, again, beyond the Michigan connection, I think does make a lot of sense for them. But then from the wide receiver spot, like I like Emeka Egbuka right there. I think that he is a really nice complement to what Ladd McConkey does well. I think that some people look at this wide receiver room and say, no, it's got to be a bigger wide receiver. It can't be a smaller dude. I mean, Emeka Egbuka is just a damn good receiver. And to me,
Right.
he's immediately somebody who gets on the field and elevates this offense. And you'd be very happy, I think, if you're taking him at number 22. So those are, two Michigan players, but then two non-Michigan players that I think about there for them at number 22.
Right. Do you, with Emeka Egbuka in particular, do you think that there is a slot redundancy there to him, or do you think that even at a smaller size, he's shown on tape that he can play outside, pretty effectively in the NFL?
Yeah, I don't think there's a redundancy there because I think both Ladd McConkey and Emeka Egbuka can play on the outside. I think they're very
Right.
comfortable winning more towards the sideline. And so I think that some people, one, I'm glad that you asked this question because I think when you get these non 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" wide receivers, a lot of people go, oh, well, there's only so many snaps in the slot. Well, if you have faith that both of those guys can play on the outside, even if it's a
Mhm.
little, even if it's more of like off the line of scrimmage stuff, you're more of a Z than you are an X, which I think both of these guys are good enough at getting off of press coverage to where they could play an X. I think when we think of an X receiver, we think it has to look a certain way. It's not always the case. It's really just somebody who, hey, when you're on the line of scrimmage, can you block pretty reliably? And then do you know how to get off the line of scrimmage when it comes to your releases and when guys are getting their hands on you in early press and things like that? And if you can do those things, you can play X. Like you can
Right.
play that on the line of scrimmage type of a role. So no, I actually don't think that there would be really any sort of redundancy with Emeka Egbuka and Ladd McConkey. I think it would just be more customization and flexibility.
Yeah, and I think that's completely fair. And the more I've thought about it, I do think that having another slot outside guy, I think just works with this offense because Ladd is still very young. Like he's not a guy that I think you're like pigeonholing as like somebody that has to be in the slot. Maybe kind of like a Cooper Cup right now, for example, right?
Right.
Someone who's a little more up there in age. So I think they can, try experimenting him, putting him outside in a way that works. Any other draft thoughts before we hop into the simulator here?
No, let's do it. Let's
All
jump right
right.
into the simulator.
Let,
Let's get to it.
let's just and before we hop into the simulator, I want you to explain the methodology of why when I make a very good pick, the machine gives me a D or an F because this
It's
has been happening for a while.
Alex, it's simply because I want you to feel challenged and I want to bring that competitiveness out of you and I want you to keep
I
doing
appreciate
more
it.
mock drafts to feed my family. No, it really, we're always trying to improve the mock draft simulation experience at PFF. And next year, I'm really excited about some of the things that we are doing for our mock draft simulator logic, where we're not just, because right now, a lot of like the good and bad grades, sometimes it's a little bit of a delay with maybe me updating the big board versus sort of like how the
Mhm.
simulator is working on the back end. So that can sort of go into it. But also, it's kind of more of a simplistic, hey, if you pick at number 22 and you pick a player who's ranked 44th on my big board or something,
Right.
well, the gap is so big between where you picked and where they're ranked, you're probably not going to be able to grade very highly, even in situations where you're picking a position of need, which can sometimes help. What we want to do next year is I want to improve this logic even more to where we're going to be having team top 100s that hopefully we can put on the back end into that logic. So we go, okay, well, here's a player that maybe independent of scheme, I might have ranked in the 30s or 40s, but specifically maybe for what the Chargers like, they could consider them at the back end of the first round. And all of a sudden that sort of goes into the logic, which starts to make the grades a little bit more realistic for each, fantasy GM drafting for their favorite team. So I never shy away from stuff like that. It's obviously a process that we're always trying to make the best mock draft simulator possible. And that's a little way we're trying to do that next year.
As a student in medical school right now, I appreciate you tacking on that curve next year after an exam. It's after like a mock draft simulator, very
Yes.
very appreciated. So I don't see as many D's and F's, and then I have the Twitter. I have people on Twitter replying to me like, "Oh, well, they gave you an F, so did you think that one through?" And I'm like, "Well, that's just how it goes." Um, Quickly here, I guess
Mhm.
just first round, I had Jordan Reed on last week, and he was sort of talking about the quarterback trade down spots and them being slightly ahead of the Chargers. I kind of have 20 and 21 circled in that particular range with,
Mhm.
what Pittsburgh might do at quarterback, what Denver also, might opt to do is just a team that could trade down with someone who's trying to leapfrog Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
Are there any natural trade up, trade down inclinations that you have here?
So you're saying like for the Chargers specifically, or even the
Yeah.
surrounding teams? So like for them, I talked about how like wide receiver is a big need. I'm a big Tetrone McMillan guy. I know everybody out there, isn't. But if Tet makes it to like the Colts at 14, right? And they're in a situation where Tyler Warren's off the board. They don't want to take Colson Loveland there. They would feel good about trading down and still being able to probably get Loveland somewhere in the 20s. Like if Tetro McMillan would be on the board, I'm the Chargers. I'm calling up Indianapolis and I'm trying to get up to go get Ted. I'm trying to
Mm,
make that possible. So that is a spot that I would look, and that's a receiver that I would go for. I mean, maybe again, if you feel like a Kenneth Grant or a Colson Loveland, you got to trade up for him. Maybe you think about that opportunity, but certainly you could trade back. I think with 10 picks in hand, you always sort of want to play every scenario and try to win every scenario as much you can. So I'm not going to say that they're not going to consider trading back, but it really all sort of depends on who's on the board. And
right.
I'm a Bucks fan. I grew up just south of Tampa, so I follow what they do. And Bucks general manager Jason Light, who normally has a pretty good finger on the pulse of sort of like what's going to happen in the draft because he can navigate it pretty well. He said at one of his pre-draft pressers, he was like, he was answering a question about like trading up or trading down, and he basically was like, well, we'll always look at those options, but he's like, this draft is not really one where there's a lot of players that
Mm,
demand you to trade up to go get,
yeah.
So outside of quarterback, like if Shadur was still on the board here at 22, and you can call up the Giants at the top end of the second round
Right.
or the Browns at the top end of the second round, like maybe you could get something like that. But other than that, there's just not a lot of singular players outside of quarterbacks that demand a trade up in this class. So I really do think that either the Chargers are trading up or they're picking at 22.
Yeah. I think we've heard also a lot of like between 20 and 60, like a lot of these, GMs kind of have players graded in like a pretty similar range. Like you said, there's not necessarily like a
Mhm.
singular guy that you're trading
Right.
up unless you're trading up at, like you said, for Tet or for Loveland and jumping up a couple spots there. Well, let's get into it. So I'm just going to start and I'm going to put you on the board at 22. We're gonna alternate picks here. So you're going to
Okay.
start. You're going to start with 22. You have what's available to you on the board here. Recently off the board, Jihad Campbell, Jalen Walker,
Yeah.
Tedero McMillan, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, Ezraku, Michael Williams, and Emeka Ibuka, who we just talked about, as well
Mhm.
as Kelvin Banks. We have Malachi Starks, Luther Burden, Kenneth Grant, Josh Simons, Nolan, who we talked about, Loveland. Pretty much a lot of that group still available. Obviously, in like a real draft scenario, I don't know if all those guys will be available, but for the purposes of this simulation, I know you talked a lot about loving Kenneth Grant here, Nolan.
Mhm.
If I make you the GM, who are you taking here?
The
And of course, the YouTube comment section will be incredibly rational about whatever you decide to do.
Of course, as they, like as they always are. No, look, the more that I do sort of this exercise for the Chargers, the more I like the draft strategy of hitting interior defensive line here, and then drafting one of the really good like tight ends or wide receivers, sometimes both, a little bit later in like round 2 and round 3. So I know on this iteration of the board, I have Kenneth Grant ranked above Walter Nolan. I just updated my big board, and so like it's just taking a
Mm,
little bit of time to get there. I actually have Walter Nolan above Kenneth Grant.
okay.
They are close, but
Hmm.
the raw overall ability and ceiling of Walter Nolan is incredibly impactful in my opinion. So I would take Walter Nolan here, and
All
I
right.
think that is going to be my selection here at number 22.
Okay. Starting with defense, and I think that DT spot makes sense. Obviously, I think like you could go Harmon, Grant, Nolan, whichever one of those guys is sort of available there. But I think DT definitely makes sense, and you're not waiting until the later rounds to like figure out who's left. Even though it is a deep DT class, you're not necessarily trying desperately to find like a playable guy who's going to eat up a lot of snaps. Just because they did have Puna Ford leave, they did have Morgan Fox leave. It's just like guys that have gotten a lot of pass rush pressures for them. So I think that makes a lot of sense there. All right, so now we're in round 2. We have Kevin Winston, Morrison, Scadaboo, the usual crop of running backs that is available here. Um, Anything sticking out to you before I make the pick?
Uh, Elijah Arroyo certainly is an upgrade at the receiver uh, spot for the tight end position. He's really standing out to me there. Kyle Williams is as well. Now I get a little bit worried about Kyle Williams and Lad McConkey being a little bit too similar. Now, if
Right.
you could clone Lad McConkey, I guess you'd be happy with it. So maybe it's not that big of a deal because I really really like Kyle Williams as a prospect. So those are the two that are standing out to me. Also, I know corner isn't the biggest need for this team,
Hmm.
but I think they're drafting a corner somewhere in rounds 2 through 4. That's what I would
Yeah.
guess with this team. So if that's the case and you don't love the wide receiver or tight end options, well, then Benjamin Morrison, I think, is a fantastic player. And he's sitting up there and he's still on the board. So like I would think about Benjamin Morrison just because he'd be a little bit tempting with how good I think he could be. So that's probably what it would be like an Elijah Arroyo, Ben Morrison, Kyle Williams. Is Trey Harris still here? I like
Yeah.
Trey Harris.
Trey Harris is still here.
That's the wide receiver that I really think that they could use. So he is
Okay.
also like he's very much in this conversation, and I would certainly think about him at 55 here.
That's true. I mean, so it's an interesting conversation with the receivers because I do think there are similar archetypes, kind of like you mentioned, Kyle Williams being a little redundant with McConkey. Jalen Royals is a guy that I think can play every spot, but might not have like the prototypical size they're looking for, right?
Mhm.
Like compared to, say, like a Trey Harris. Um, this is a tough spot because there's a lot of guys I like, and then the running backs. Like I kind of don't think Travion Henderson's like gonna be there on draft day, but then you have like the insane production of like Scadaboo, who's like prime Harbaugh guy. So I do feel some pressure here. Um, I think for this team having a really high end like pass catching option, kind of like you mentioned, I feel the need to go Arroyo here just because I'm not personally in love with the tight end depth down the class.
Mhm.
Because I think there's some good talent you can get there, but I really do think Arroyo is probably the closest guy that I have maybe near like not in Loveland Warren range, but like if you're looking for some of that production. So
If
what
you
what,
if you
what
want
do you
if
think
you
about
want
the
an
pick here?
impact tight end, you better pick one second or third round. Because like for as
Yeah.
deep as this tight end class is, you won't get one after that. So I think it's rare that you even get to say that rounds 1 through 3. So if you didn't pick tight end here, I have a guy that I like in round 3.
Okay.
Um, Terrence Ferguson, honestly. So like
Mm.
so like I'd pick T Ferg in the third round if he was there. If you didn't take tight end here,
Okay.
so.
All right. That well, no, because I like Ferguson a lot too, just as a
Yeah.
guy that could help this offense. So that makes things more interesting. Um,
I think the thing is that we're gonna be pretty good either way. Because
yeah.
if you draft a wide receiver here, I'm probably gonna still draft a tight end. If you draft a
Okay.
tight end here, I'm probably gonna look long and hard at wide receiver, depending on who's on the board. But uh, yeah, yeah.
All
I'll
right.
I'll let you make the call, and then I'll adjust and do what I need to do on the round three.
I think I'm going to go with Trey Harris.
Okay.
I think he is long term. If you're talking about pairing a guy with Ladd, even though I might have him like neck and neck with Royals and some of the other guys there,
Mhm.
um, the more prototypical guy that they need at that position, and so like tiebreaker for me is just like sort of the skill set that they need with him there, and I think he's an immediate spark plug to their offense to the point where you're not relying a whole lot on like Mike Williams to turn back the clock. You take a little
Right.
bit of the stress off there, and so I do think that would be kind of the way I go there. So you're now kind of in tight end territory, like you said. Is Ferguson still on the
No,
board?
I think he went.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Ferguson and
So,
Mason Taylor, like, right in front of you.
oh
Those are
wow.
the 2 guys that you're hoping for, so, this
Ah,
is good, though. This
well,
is good. We've gotta explore the scenario if this
yeah,
is what ends up happening for them. Um, I'm wondering if there's a good no, I don't think Royals isn't gonna be available here. I think Kyle Williams is probably going a little bit sooner as well. Jalen Noel could be, although man, his stock is rising a lot. Not that I would
yeah,
pick him for the Chargers. I'm just kind of
yeah.
talking out loud here.
He's fun to watch because like I don't think that he is like Lad McConkey after the catch, but he gives me some like Lad McConkey vibes before the catch a little bit.
mm,
So I'm pretty high on what his skill set is. Him and Higgins we're both great.
yeah. Okay. Let's keep scrolling down a little bit here.
Hmm.
Um, man, they just.
So
Oh, I think Anthony Belton's their type, but would they take him at?
okay,
Actually,
I'm not that familiar with Belton. Is he someone that could like kick inside, and that's like kind of the
yes,
conversation because he's
yes,
listed on at
definitely.
tackle here?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. He is much more of a tackle. So, but I mean, you got Zion, you have Bradley Bozeman. Obviously, you signed Mekhi Becton, so it's not like a major need. They still have Jamari Sawyer on the roster, right? To be able to play
Yeah,
like tackle or
and
guard.
Trey Pipkins, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So they probably wouldn't take him there. Man, maybe Harold Fannin.
Mm. How high are you on Fannin?
Well, obviously, I've got him as like a fringe top 100 guy. I think that he's
Okay.
like, if he goes late third, like, okay, I understand it.
Mhm.
Early fourth, like, I can understand that. I'm not one of those people who thinks he's just unbelievable,
Right.
despite the production this past season. I think he's like a Johnu Smith type of a player, but I think
Yeah.
Johnu Smith was a little bit stronger of a blocker coming in, and he's more blossomed into a receiver, whereas Errol Fannin, I think, is a better receiver. Not that he's not a good, okay blocker. I mean, he's a good pound for pound guy. Are we reaching here though? Can we scroll up a little bit? Let's see.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
can go. I could go Harold Fannin. I wouldn't mind that. I wish a corner would have dropped to us, but
So there is Damian Martinez here, but are you kind of generally of the mindset of like wait on the running backs a little bit?
I am. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't. I like Damian Martinez,
Yeah.
but I feel like right. I mean, like they've got Haskins. They have Kamani Vidal. They just signed Najee. Hmm. 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 I think we should probably go Fannin.
Okay. All right. Let's go Fannin.
I think that's probably the best use of this pick here, and then seeing what we have moving forward. Because after Fannin, it starts to get tougher.
Dicey, yeah.
Yeah, it
And
starts
in terms of finding an immediate impact guy, and
to
even
get
though, like you
dicey.
said, I don't think he's like the best blocker. I think the value that you're getting in like a Trey Harris plus, uh, you know, Trey Harris plus Fannin like stack just in those two picks there from a receiving standpoint, like
Mhm.
kind of outweighs some of the blocking concerns that I think
Yeah.
people could have with Fannin. All right, so now we're back up in round four. This is very much, I think, like some running back territory to some degree, although we have gone two straight offensive picks. Um, what stands out to you here?
What is their slot corner situation? Who do they have a slot again?
So that'll be a little bit interesting because like technically they don't. They can put like Tarhib there. I mean, obviously, like Derwin as like a safety is like he's gonna
Oh
play
yeah,
some.
Derwin can
He's gonna
play.
play some. He's gonna play some of the slot there.
Yeah.
And then they really signed Benjamin St. Just and Dante Jackson as like
Oh
sort of
right,
like
the
two,
outsides.
but
Yeah.
those are two outside replacements. So
Mhm.
I think they could probably the board hasn't really like actually. I mean, I don't think that they need like any particular brand of corner. Obviously, you could go for like a slot or an outside guy. I think
Mhm.
that they're just kind of looking for talent at this point, and then they're also kind of aided by like some of the Derwin stuff that like. And I think optimally, I mean, we'll see where Tarhib plays this year, but obviously he has a lot of flexibility, and I think they played him like a decent amount there last year. So
Can I see the regular board or just
yeah,
the
yep.
main board? Oh, I like Mickens. Mickens a good player. Jaden Blue gives you a ton of speed as a running back. Like
Mm,
if you were considering running back, I mean he is yeah, I mean he's a speed demon. I like Isaac Tesla, but he's basically just a big slot. So that
mm,
would start to get into some redundancy unless you just wanted, like better receivers on the team you could. But the reason why I was asking about the slot is honestly because of Billy Bowman. Like I think Billy Bowman can
mm.
play in the slot. I think he can play safety for you. I think he's like a pretty versatile dude. So
Okay.
he is somebody that I think about just as a playmaking defensive back. That if you're just talking like, hey, we're kind of like looking, we're looking at best player available here. I think Billy Bowman and then Seth McLaughlin obviously was playing really well before he got hurt for Ohio State. Depending on how much faith you have in Bozeman and obviously coming
Yeah.
back with the contract, I don't know. You might be able to get an interior guy there. So
Well, it's actually interesting because they've talked about maybe wanting to like get work with Zion Johnson
at
at
center,
center
right?
at
Yeah, I
this
saw
year. So
that.
that's like a consideration of like how early are they going to take like an interior offensive line guy, which like sparks some of this, Gray Zabel, like
Mhm,
as well as
mhm.
Booker speculation, like in the first round of like could they go early with a guard and then kick Zion inside? That's like sort of um, an idea there, but
I
um,
might I might go Bowman just for talent.
okay, yeah,
I might go Bowman just for talent because he could play slot for you. He could play any safety spot, and they're pretty deep at safety. But it just gives you more flexibility to use your corners in different ways, like Hart and Tarheeb still. So, um, yeah, that's probably what I would go with there.
all right. So let's see who's come off the board recently. I had a strategy that I was gonna mention. I actually don't know if it's doable because your co-host Connor Rogers likes him even more than me. I'm a Rutgers grad, just to
Oh,
say.
you're a Kyle
So,
Monangai guy?
yeah, so I am a Kyle Monangai guy, which is crazy because Rogers has him
Did he
maybe
leave?
three spots higher than I do. I think he went. So that oh no, he's still on the board. Okay.
There you go. There you
All
go.
right. Yeah. I wanted Kyle
Let's
Monangai
do it.
here,
There we go.
running back.
Okay. Okay.
I just think he's like the ultimate Jim Harbaugh, like Greg Roman, like back. I mean, I'm sure you've seen like the pass like protection tape that
Yes.
he has
Yes.
there,
It's been
just as
awesome.
like
It's
instant impact
awesome.
guy, and
Yep.
like putting him into this offense. I know he's not like a speed burner guy, like you could take Jadon Blue or like Tootin earlier, but I think he's
Right.
like kind of instant impact guy for them is like guy that's like ready to play like on day one a little bit compared to some of those guys. So
Mhm.
I love Kyle Manogue guy. So I felt the need to like take him there. I gave you the Bowman pick so that I was like I'm gonna take my
That
running back
that's
there.
fine, that's fine. I like Ty Robinson here, honestly,
Okay.
the defensive lineman from Nebraska. Very versatile player. He could play nose
Hmm.
for you. He could play, 3 technique. He could play 4 eye, and in that odd front that they like to run there, I think that he is an ideal sort of rotational player who just gives you a lot of size, a lot of explosiveness, a lot of he's just not really a pass rusher, but he's somebody who just loves the dirty work and the physical play
Yeah.
that you need to be able to play in those odd fronts. So I think Ty Robinson would be my guy here.
No, I think Robinson makes a lot of sense as like best player available, and like the ability of like taking Nolan earlier and being able to have like both of those guys as like your interior is like pretty crazy. With they have Taylor Tart for like some pass rush juice, as well as some guys like Daquan Jones and Deshaun Hand that they signed. But you sort of make those guys your like rotation players and like build it around like two really solid, particularly Nolan obviously is a first round guy, but getting Ty Robinson here I think is like kind of a steal. So I'm in agreement with you there.
All right, there we go.
All right, so now we are kind of in the doldrums of the draft of
So
like
funny, they
kind of.
still have 4 more picks.
I know.
I don't think, man. I don't think Deontay Thornton's going to be here this late, but the fact that he is, like
Yeah.
him or Andrew Armstrong, genuinely, like one of
Yeah.
the, honestly, like Zoff Frazier's right there, and I guess we pick in 10 picks anyways. So
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
would take.
I kind of am leaning Thornton here. I
I
think that like
Thornton
if
would
you
be
just
excellent in my
get
opinion.
like that huge speed guy, because I mean, like I think there's some, we got Trey Harris in this draft, but if you just want a guy that like is a developmental like project a little bit here that can show has some athletic flashes and can like get into the rotation within the next couple of years, I think he's very much, if they're this late in the draft, kind of their versions of just like almost the Brendan Rice slash Cornelius Johnson, like dark
Mhm.
trucks that they had last year. So I'm all for it.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
go
do
with
that.
Dante
And then
Thornton.
honestly, like Zoff Frazier should probably be the next pick. You're just taking a
Mm.
swing at a corner from UTSA. Did he get picked? No. He didn't. He
Oh
didn't.
no,
He's still there.
he's still here. Okay.
Yeah, there he is.
So tell me about Zoff Frazier.
So, this year is Tariq Woolen, right? I mean, like that's kind of the
Okay.
build. It's funny that he went to the same school as well, but like 6'3", 185 pounds, super lean, super long, really explosive athlete. He just doesn't really know what he's doing. I mean, sometimes the footwork is a mess. He plays a lot in off coverage, but it's like just like Tariq Woolen was able to develop. If you get a good cornerbacks coach with him, you might be able to find like a diamond in the rough type of a player here. So that's where I would go since we haven't picked a pure corner yet. I think they're going to take one in this draft. So he's who I would go with.
We also haven't picked offensive line yet, which I do feel like at some point do we consider. I mean, like I don't think they're actually going to be here when the draft like happens, but you have like Frazier, Jake Majors, like as guys that maybe
Majors,
fit
I
up.
think will probably be like a 5th, 6th round pick type
Okay.
of player. Miles Frazier, I think will be maybe more of like a 4th. So you're right. I think that
Mm.
he probably isn't there, but
I think about Majors here, just the like you're not putting all of your eggs kind of in the Zion basket or like Bradley
I mean,
Bozeman
that's
or
totally fine.
like,
Again, we have
yeah.
another pick in 5 picks. So I think
Yeah,
if you
that's
took
true.
Majors here, you could still take Frazier
Yeah.
in 5 picks.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think he's gonna go.
So
So
yeah, I just think you look at what he brings to the table there, and just that ability to kind of have a center like in
mhm,
development. Probably wouldn't like start this year with those guys, but getting that guy for the future, I think makes a
mhm.
lot of sense. And then
Yeah,
we can go
yeah.
with
Let's go.
Za Frazier there as this year's Tariq Woolen, which will
I,
build him up.
he is a new addition to the big board, so you might get an F for that pick
Mm.
just because
Oh.
he's not on the back end. Like we don't have him in like the IQ
Mm.
part of it. So
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I have plenty
might
of
be still.
experience getting Fs on the big board. Like I said before, not my first rodeo. So
Can I see your picks? Tab?
yes. So we went Walter Nolan, Trey Harris, Harold Fannin, Billy Bowman, Kyle Monangai, Ty Robinson, Dante Thornton, Jake Majors,
Yeah,
Za Frazier.
yeah, a lot of good players. A lot of good players there.
Yeah. So what positions haven't? I'm just curious if there's like a position we didn't hit. We didn't go guard, but I mean, we didn't necessarily like have to because we
Mhm.
did hit the center quota.
What pass rushers are left? Just because you can never have
Oh
too
yeah,
many guys that you're
we could
taking
talk
a chance
about
on.
like edge, see what's available.
I mean, Colin Oliver is interesting.
What? Who is he? I'm not familiar.
No, so he's a former off-ball linebacker that turned into an edge rusher, and he's like very streamlined. Where it's like, okay, he does not know what he's doing yet, but at least he's pretty dang explosive. So I don't even know
Okay.
if he'll be a 7th rounder. He'll probably be maybe even a mid day 3 type of a guy. But I think with him being available, I think he would actually be a really good pick for them.
All right. Yeah. We'll go with them. So I think that is finally all the picks. We got through all 10. Let's
Woo!
let's see what grade the machine churns out for us here. They give us a B.
All
You know,
right. Okay. Okay.
they gave me a D plus for the Monangai pick, which again, like
That's on you. That's on you.
that's that is on me. But yeah, so general thoughts of like what we got here, and when you just do these mock drafts in general, thoughts on kind of like the exercise going through
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, certainly, I kind of would have rather had a different tight end or corner there in the third round. I think that maybe makes this a little bit better. But I do like the idea of going interior defense line with a stud in round one, and then some combination of wide receiver and tight end in round two and three. And you hoping, I think you're staying at the ready. The phones are at the ready to where like if you get to a point where it's, let's say they took Trey Harris in the second round, then third round's coming around and you watch like Elijah Arroyo, Mason Taylor, like they both go off the board and Terrence Ferguson's the last one left. Like you're getting on the phone and you're calling somebody up to say like, hey, let's move up 10, 15 spots. Let's make sure we go get that player that we really want there. And then obviously you have a little bit of less picks, but you can feel great about that baseline of those three picks right there to start that draft.
Yeah. I think that anything you're kind of filling around there, just like, you can just sort of do your dart. Once you hit, I feel like defensive lineman, wide receiver, and tight end, you can kind of just go wherever you want on
Mhm.
like day three and play the board to best value or
Mhm.
like, some fits. Obviously, there some guys will just be like special teams players and like, you kind of develop them for later. But I think that was a pretty solid foundation. I think people will certainly like the first two picks. We'll probably get some mixed responses after that, but such is
It's a
the
great,
NFL mock draft.
That's why, like I think that people when they do mock drafts, they read mock drafts, like sometimes they think like, well, this mock wasn't perfect, so I don't like it. It's not very good.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like I think that that's good feedback. Like I always listen to people who
Mm,
who have opinions one way or the other, but also like that's why mock drafts exist, right? You go through
yeah.
these exercises not because you think every mock is going to be perfect, but you get in a scenario where even like the one we just did, we went, okay, great, Walter Nolan, okay, great, Trey Harris, and then third round,
Yeah.
a lot of the players that we wanted were gone. And then you
Mm,
have to be able to pivot. So it's like a
right.
legitimate general manager simulation. And you try to sort of like pick the best player that's available there. And then you go on to different ways. So I love mock drafts and I love sort of the feedback that you get from them. I really do.
And I even think back to last year, like the Tarheeb still pick, right? Like on day three,
Yeah.
it's less taking like best player available more so than like, okay, well, this guy might be in the 300s on the consensus boards, but we really liked him. We think he's going to pop in our defense. And they took a shot on him. None of us like really knew who he was
Yeah. And he
at the
really
time,
worked out, man.
and he has worked out just generally really well with the production and how playable he was this year in coverage. So that'll do it for us today. Connor, any final thoughts on the Chargers or before we get out of this episode here?
Well, you just called me Connor, and
Oh my
I
god.
gotta say his hair is better than mine, so I can't even
Oh
take
my
that. I can't even
god.
let it slide out of respect for my co. I
Oh,
can't let it slide. So,
I
dude, you're
was I
funny.
was just
You are
thinking about
funny.
him because
I
I was thinking about him because of the Menengai
When one
thing.
guy pick, like
Oh
I
wow.
understand. I understand. It's all right there.
Oh, I
Um,
really nailed the first 37 minutes, and then just like that, it's
brother,
just done.
you are totally fine. Alex, I
uh,
appreciate you having me, man. This was a lot of
yeah.
fun. It was fun to go through this exercise again, like because honestly, like it wasn't perfect, but I love going through those exercises with somebody who knows the team super well. So this is a lot of fun, man. Even though you called me Connor, I do appreciate you having me on the show. I really do.
Oh, I appreciate it, Trevor. Thank you for coming on, and everyone at home, as always, bolt up.